Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. The next comment or question comes from Shay Berger. And this is in response to the Death of the Crones video, a video I did in December 2021. And Shay writes, Oasis was a great concept, which never materialised. The vision was there, let's create a computer platform for making music and upgrade it as we see fit. Yay to the concept. Was it a computer-based platform? Yes, it was. Was it ever really updated? Only to a certain point, because it was discontinued. Kronos was supposedly the successor. Did they make big changes to the hardware? No, they didn't. Did they change the OS, for example, to a 64-bit support or more RAM? No, they did not do that either. Did Nautilus came out with a modern, better hardware to support faster performance and significant upgrades? Hell no. So Korg, Roland, whoever, WTF, these are the 2020s. Hardware is cheap, guys. You have the basic concept of a modular platform as a vision. Why not? Well, why not implement it? Why haven't you implemented it? There are some very, very, very good points there. And it's funny actually, because when I wrote this response, I'd actually just had a very similar conversation about this with a friend on the same subject. Now, the problem with Oasis was that the Oasis platform was just too expensive. I think having an aluminium case, which is what the Oasis was, and the keybed, which I've always said is a fantastic keybed, much better than the Kronos keybed, and all the lights next to the faders and switches, etc., etc. The Oasis was very well done, but I think that the tooling and the way the Oasis was constructed made it expensive to build, and also made it expensive, therefore, to sell. With a Oasis in the UK was circa £8,000 and probably around about $8,000 in the US and elsewhere in the world, equivalent currency. Now, the thing about Oasis and the fact it was expensive, and the fact that I think that depressed the sales. People bought Oasis, but people who bought Oasis were the professional musicians who really needed Oasis. So from that perspective, you can see why it wasn't selling. But on the flip side of that, if you look at the moment about second-hand Oasis, in fact, I was looking this morning, so this is several months after actually writing the reply to the to Shay. This morning I looked, and Oasis, even 76 key versions, were still over the £2,000 mark, and a good 88 key version, which is what I own, is now circa £2,500 or more if it's in really tip-top condition. Yes, you can get them cheaper, but they are commanding quite a serious amount of money. But when Korg dropped the Oasis, they dropped it in favour of the Kronos, and development of the engines for the Oasis stopped. And what Korg did, actually, as a final parting hurrah, is they made all the all the engines you had to buy, they made them free. So that was kind of the last hurrah. I bet you were quite pissed, I suppose, if you'd invested, I can't remember what they were now, but several $100s, pounds into buying a engine for the Oasis only for it to become free 2 or 3 years later. But that is the way of the world and the way of the industry. Now, I have a friend that is a Linux platform admin. Now, I know enough about Linux and embedded Linux to get me through various bits and bobs. But when we come to serious embedded Linux and Linux machines, yeah, that's not my forte. But he's an admin, and his opinion is that it would have been possible to move Kronos engines back to Oasis if there had been a will to do it. That was kind of his point. He said because he's looked at the Kronos and he looked at the Oasis and he's looked at them in a funny mode that he could get to. I'm not going to tell you how to do that because I don't want you messing around with the OS. But he showed me how to do it, and you can get in there, and he had a good poke around, and his opinion was, yeah, you probably could have taken the engines for the Kronos and ported them backwards onto the Oasis if there had been a will. But it would have taken some effort, and while this would have enhanced the Oasis, it probably wouldn't have actually moved Korg forward anyway, but it would have kept the loyalty factor, I suppose. Now, do I think that would have affected Kronos sales in the long run? No. Kronos has proved itself to be a much better platform in the round than Oasis, as opposed to Oasis being a much better keyboard, as in a playing surface. That's the kind of key. I like a lot of things about Oasis, but I would still have my Kronos in my studio over my Oasis, if that makes any sense. Now, in terms of why haven't Korg not ported the OS to 64-bit? Now, what my Linux friend has said to me on several occasions is it would have again required some effort, but there actually was no reason why they couldn't port the base computer code to 64-bit. What he said though is he thinks that things like the DSP, for argument's sake, can only run in 32-bit, and therefore that's probably the reason why they have kept the OS at 32-bit and not moved it to 64-bit. When he was poking around in the machine, his opinion was that the DSP isn't capable of 64-bit operation, and therefore you would have had to be running some sort of 32-bit converter on everything you sent to the DSP, which is pretty much everything. So he thinks that that's probably why they haven't done it. And given that they've used the same architecture in Nautilus, you know, they tweaked the operating system but effectively used the same architecture in terms of hardware, he said, in his opinion, that's probably why they haven't made Nautilus 64-bit, because it requires wholesale re-engineering of the bits that are not the computer. So, it will be required. So whatever Korg are thinking up in the skunk works, and they've been extremely quiet and told nobody what they're doing, their next flagship machine is going to have to be 64-bit. If they want to take the fight back, or take the crown back of being the workstation in the market, which I think Kronos held that position for a number of years. Yes, Montage and Phantom have come along and have been nipping at the heels of the king. Have they stolen the crown? Many people who are Kronos users have said that Kronos still holds its own. I think it still holds its own as well, but I do think that there are reasons why you would pick a Phantom. I probably would say a Phantom over a Montage for me. but many people are going down the Yamaha platform route because of the interoperability between Montage and Modi X. That's been discussed on the channel many times, so I'm not going to go into that argument. And finally, in terms of Nautilus over Kronos, well, again, I've said this on the channel. I said it fairly recently in a mailbag again. If you are a giggy musician and you make your money by playing keyboards and you want something that is supportable and serviceable, you don't really have an awful lot of option. If you want to remain on the Korg platform, it is Nautilus. If you're prepared to take the risk, I would say probably buy a second-hand Kronos and keep that in the background just in case your main one goes poof, or swap platforms to a different manufacturer.